My grandfather, Homer Calvin Kelton, was born in a farmhouse in the community of Cobb, Texas in 1923. They had no access to electricity and lived their lives without it. In those days, electricity was found only in cities or rich homes, and 90% of rural American homes did not have electricity. During the Great Depression, my grandfather and his family moved from the farmhouse to Henrietta, Texas, where he was introduced to and grew up with electricity. When he was a freshman in high school, he and his younger brother moved back to work on the farm in Cobb with their aunt and uncle because my great-grandparents had too many mouths to feed back in the city. In the mornings on the farm, the family would start a fire in the fireplace to warm the house and start another fire in the stove to cook their breakfast. There was no refrigeration to store meat, vegetables, and milk, so they stored them in dark, cold places like cellars. And when they needed water, they had to pump it from a well outside during all seasons: hot, warm, freezing cold rain, and snow. After breakfast, my grandfather would pack up leftovers from breakfast to eat for lunch while working on the farm. At night, coal oil lanterns were their only source of light, besides the fireplace. And to take a hot bath, they had to heat up water on the stovetop. There for sure wasn't any air conditioning, so the only way to cool down on a hot day was to find a shady spot under a tree or in the shadow of an old building. When my grandfather turned 18, he dropped out of high school and enlisted into the military to fight in World War II. Years later, when the war was over and he returned to his home, life as he had once known on the farm had changed. Electricity had finally reached Cobb, and the farm now had electric appliances: a refrigerator, a stove, an iron, a washing machine, an electric pump for the well outside, and a light bulb in the house. The conveniences of the city of Henrietta, which was only 15 to 20 miles from rural Cobb, brought massive change to the rural way of life. And electricity also brought massive progress. My grandfather went from growing up with no electricity to living in a community surrounded with it, to then again moving back to a place without electricity. What he did not have, he knew existed, but getting electricity to Cobb seemed as impossible as a task as a man landing on the moon. Today, we take so much for granted. We may or may not always appreciate today's technology, such as the newest iPhone or the flat-screen TV hanging on our wall. And we really have no idea what it would be like to study by lantern or build a fire to stay warm. I do not believe most of my generation would know how to survive without electricity. So I am thankful to the ones like my grandfather, the greatest generation, who embraced change and brought electricity to rural places like Cobb, Texas.